What is going on in the world? What's going on with this generation? What's going on with the next generation? Business has changed fundamentally over the years. I mean, now more than ever, we're online, but there's still business offline, and leadership values have changed. So, what do we do? What do we do? That's why I'm excited to have author and speaker Philip Zimmermann on the show talking about unleashing the millennials and developing the leadership of the next generation. I'm going to bring him up right after we thank our sponsor. Every business needs a book, including yours. Visit freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com today to learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Once again, that's freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Philip Zimmermann. Philip, how are you feeling today?
Hi, I'm doing fantastic, Mario, and yourself.
I'm feeling great, and I love what you're speaking on because so many people think I hear it from the boomer generation that the millennials are all over the place, and the millennials think that the boomers are just whatever. They're too radically different, this and that. And I don't believe either of those to be true. And I want to know your take on it. What's happening with leadership through the decades, and how is it fundamentally different than it used to be?
I'd love to address that with you, and we will get into that as this discussion continues.
So tell me what inspired you to write your book in the first place.
I was doing a doctoral leadership program for a Institute of Leadership I was developing for a high school I was teaching at, and I encountered in literature review information about the millennial generation, which was very shocking to me. I was teaching them in the high school seniors, and they were having very difficulty entering the workforce, and they were being vilified by their boomer employers, and they themselves hated what they were doing and continued to search for other jobs. When I saw that, I was also concurrently taking a coaching program as part of this doctoral program I was in, or organizational leadership, and I decided to take what I was learning in the classroom, take what I was learning in my studies, and actually opening a coaching practice to help my business associates that I used to work with when I was in business before I got into education, and help them guide their millennial talent to actually take over their companies. That's the main focus, is that help them, one, communicate with their millennial talent, and two, prepare them to take over their companies. So that's kind of why I started the business.
And what have you found has been the biggest what have you found has been the biggest benefit of being able to teach the millennials stuff from the previous generations?
I think the biggest benefit is really to recognize that the differences between millennials and boomers is a very real difference. It is significantly different. Now we
How
all
big of
have,
a different in what ways would you say?
we're all human, and we all have. And actually, we all want the same thing. Millennials and boomers really all want the same thing. So when the
What's
millennials
that?
say they want, work-life balance,
Okay.
flex time, great benefits. You ask a boomer, they want those same things, except we never knew we could ask for it. So we never did. We just put our head down and did what we were needed to do to keep a job. And when the millennials came to the workforce asking for those things up front, it offended a lot of boomers. But the reason why they were able to do that is that while boomers were being raised, the way we were educated and trained by both our parents and our teachers in the classroom was an authority figure, basically the teacher or the principal or the people in authority in government. And there was a lot of respect that you had for of these authority figures, and a fear that you had from these authority figures of punishment for getting out of line. And the millennials were really educated in a much different environment. The teacher in the classroom was not the expert. The resources available on the internet and through other sources were really where the experts were. The teacher became a facilitator of
Mm.
information. So there was this understanding by millennials that we work together to gain information, disparate parts of information. We put it together as in a team and move forward. And so when they entered the workforce, the idea of flex time and boomers assumed you're at work when you're at your station, right? Work occurs at a particular location at a particular time. Millennials were raised that work occurs wherever you are. It could be in a coffee shop, it could be at home, In my book, I have a part of a chapter devoted to this of the millennials got it right. And one of the parts I had in the book was the millennials wanted this opportunity to do flex work and work from home, remote working. We're now calling it remote working. And the pandemic forced that. And the biggest, because I try to tell my boomer employers that I work with, that it really is possible for them to go and work wherever they want. And they want, you won't lose productivity. And that's the one thing that all of my boomer friends and businesses that I work with have expressed, is that while they've allowed these remote workers to go as a result of the pandemic, and now they're working remotely, they have not seen a loss in productivity, and they were shocked. And in fact, most of them said that probably only half their staff will be returning after the pandemic is finished, because there really is a desire of some of their staff to remain remote, which is fine with them because they save on rent, save on office space. And for the talent that's remote, there is more of a freedom that they feel in their position. It doesn't work for everybody, but there's a large portion of the workforce that's not coming back into a workplace. They're still going to do their work, but they're not going to be doing it in a workplace per se.
I agree, and I'm seeing the good in this because I've been telling people for 10, 15 years the way you can leverage the internet and do some of these things. A lot of what's hit mainstream now is nothing new to us in marketing, and especially the technology side and, video, right, just in general. But I've even heard of some stories where there's not only not a loss of productivity, some are seeing increases because there's, if you're like a typical 8-hour day, if you can do it in 3 or 4 hours, what do you do those next 3 or 4 hours? It's actually, I've had experts on the show, and they've talked about where most people do 2 to 2.5 hours of actually productive work, and the rest is just kind of in there. And, if you want to talk about the efficiency of it, it's a very exciting time because we've never had this opportunity before, even 10, 20 years ago. So what are you seeing as far as the boomers are they more adjusting to it now, or is it because they're open-minded, or is it because out of necessity?
I think it's out of necessity, but they're also seeing that this lack of, there has not been a drop in productivity. That's been the thing that has really shocked them. And I've tried to express to them, I said, the reality is it really depends on what are your expectations for engagement, productivity, and loyalty of your employees. And if they're expressing whatever you have, whether they're in the office or out of the office, what is your expectation for engagement? If they're providing that engagement in the material that they're dealing with, or whatever their job is, whether they're in the office or out of the office, what does it matter? What is your productivity and desire for them? What's your expectation? I would just have the people I work with, just write down, what is your expectation for engagement, productivity, and loyalty if they're working in the office, and just measure them on that same expectation remotely. And they've all come back and said, Philip, this is really strange, but it's all being met. But where they feel this loss is they feel the loss this is how it's expressed. The millennials are missing the community, right? Because when we're in the office, everybody's kind of together, and you can kind of talk to Bill or to Jane, and you can have real easy to do groups where, when you're online and stuff, it's difficult. And I said, I can see that. And we had another person on the call, and he finally said, the really gets me. He says, is that my problem is I can't walk in on them. And we were like, what are you talking about? He said, well, I like to go down the hall and step in somebody's office and just check up on them, see how they're doing. He said, I miss that. I don't get to do that. And one of the things I'll tell your listeners that I came up with for them, and they're actually implementing it, told it to my daughter, who's a physician, and she's in charge of a large group, and she's actually doing it as well, which was in Zoom. If you have Zoom, you can also do it Microsoft Teams and other products, but I like Zoom. The unlimited package where I get a lot of people on, and I can just leave Zoom on. I just said, just open up a Zoom room that everybody who's working in a particular group or team just goes in the Zoom room and just puts their video on no video and their mic on mute. And when you want to say something or enter into a room, you just come into the Zoom room like everybody else is already there and ask them what they're doing, and have them turn their camera on, start to talk. And it's actually worked out to be pretty efficient. They're trying to get that idea of community. So that's really what they're missing more than anything, is just from the boomer perspective, is the ability to because people aren't working unless I see them working. See, that's the mindset we have. I'm a boomer, and I was raised in that mindset, and I can tell you it's a very real mindset. But in regards to this idea of millennial, who they are is just, when I said that they're different, and you said, how are they different? Let me just briefly share with you very quickly what has happened. And this is what you're seeing in the streets really all over the country, of all this political foment, but really the rioting in the streets and the idea of socialism and all this kind of stuff coming into our common vernacular right now in the media, really in our country, is a result of who the millennials really are. They were raised in a totally postmodern culture. I won't go into all the details of it, but modern philosophy, which is all boomers were raised into this idea of what's called modern philosophy, part of Western philosophy, ended in 1947 after World War II. And the seat of modern philosophy at that time was in Germany and in France. And of course, those were both decimated by World War II. And nobody really picked up because all the philosophers were either killed or dispersed. And so nobody really picked up and said, well, we need to continue modern philosophy. And so this idea of postmodern, after modern philosophy entered in, which is really an anti-philosophy. And just the difference between the two is pretty stark. For the boomers are raised that there is something called truth, and there is a right way to live. So there is a truth and there's a right way to live. Millennials were totally raised in a culture that said there is no such thing as truth, and there is no wrong way to live. So that difference, there is a right way to live versus there is no wrong way to live. It doesn't sound like it's that different, but it's hugely different.
There's a big difference.
And so that's a philosophical difference. It has to do with truth and justice. What is true and what is justice? And so this whole idea of social justice reform and everything else. And the reason why boomers are pushing back against it is because we have a sense of what justice is, and we have a sense of what truth is. For the millennial generation, this is just generically, not necessarily each person in the millennial generation, but on a broad basis, they don't really have an understanding of something being true, right? They have their own truth, but there's something universal. They don't have that concept. And because of that, they have no universal concept of justice. Justice is whatever I get. I discovered that in the classroom. And that's what got me started in doing the leadership program and everything else, was discovering the idea of, I had a student tell me one day after getting caught cheating, plagiarizing on an assignment, that it was okay to lie as long as you didn't get caught, it didn't hurt anybody else, and you got what you wanted. And I said I couldn't believe that. So wow. I asked my classes that I was teaching, and I asked the student, how many of you believe this, that it's okay to lie as long as you don't get caught, it doesn't hurt anybody else, and you get what you were after? And virtually, I think I taught 87 students that day. 84 of the 87 students raised their hand. And I was this is not right.
And how long ago was this? And what was the median age?
It was seniors in high school, so they were 17, 18 years old. And this was 6 years ago. And that's what prompted me really into studying the generation and developing a leadership program, because I knew that type of thinking was way off from what. And so what I thought to myself was, when these people enter the workforce, and if their ideas for justice, and that has to do with the idea of both truth and justice, if justice is getting whatever they want, as long as they don't get caught, and it doesn't hurt anybody else, what does justice mean in the workplace? So does justice mean that when they, they're trying to make a friend at another company, and to make a friend in another company, you rip off your own company there's all kinds of issues, ethical issues that come into play. And so I was trying to find out what was the basis of that. And then that's an age change. That's a philosophical age change. The second one that went along with it. And so you get these two ages together, and it's just what's causing all this that's happening. And we will see a significant change globally in the next 15 to 20 years. You wouldn't recognize the next 15 to 20 years today if you were to see it, because the change is going to be global.
Good or bad? Where are we going with this?
Well, it just depends. It really just depends.
You're just saying you don't know the outcome. You're just saying there's going to be a major shift one way or another.
And it could either be good or it could be bad. I mean, you look at, in other words, we don't know how the Egyptians built the pyramids. We do see the pyramids out there, right? We have no idea how they built them, especially the Great Pyramid. I mean, if you went on the line and just Google what the unique things about the Great Pyramid in Giza are, you'd be shocked by what it is. It's actually oriented to true north, not magnetic north. It's the exact center of landmass on the Earth. It takes into account of the idea of pi, and there's all kinds of stuff associated. There's stars it's lined up with. How'd they do that? 3,500 years ago, 4,000 years ago when they built that thing. Well, we have no idea how they did that. So where did that technology go? Where did that understanding go? And we're entering a time right now where I think that's going to occur in the next 15 to 20 years. We're going to enter a time where will we still use computers? Will we even know what they are? Will we know what a textbook is? Or will we, they're talking about anyway, it's, I'll expand on that briefly in a moment, but the reason for that is that we had 3 other changes, and this has to do with going from an industrial age model of our business to what's called the connected age model of our business, and it impacts 3 areas. One is the economy, how we make and buy things, or how we buy things, money, exchange money, and the economics. We used to buy and sell local, now it's all global, and done on the internet, which brings in the second one.
And I'll even say this: it used to be with money. Now you got people doing Bitcoin and electronic currency.
My estimate is that if depends on who the president is after this election, I'll be decided sometime within the next week, hopefully within the next week. I'm convinced that if China has its way, they're already converting all of their currency into their own. They have their own form of Bitcoin right now, and they're going to make it so that if you want to buy and sell things from China, you have to use their currency, because they're after becoming the global currency, and it's going to all be Bitcoin. And eventually, the millennials are going to go for it. Why would you ever carry cash?
How long do you think before everything like physical cash is phased out, if it gets to that?
Well, it depends on the United States. The United States is the only one going to hold back. I would say within 10 years, we will have a one world currency within 10 years, global currency. They tried it in the Obama administration. They were all ready to go with it, but it just wasn't time. And so they didn't do it. But
you think the only way that 2030 cash won't exist?
I think cash won't exist, and we'll have a global currency, and there'll be no debt. There'll be no global debt. That's how they're going to do it. They're going to go to a global currency by eliminating global debt.
It's like the largest. That literally be the largest bailout in history.
Oh yeah. Well, they're talking about bailing out all the student loans. So you elect us, we're going to forgive all student loans. We got $2 trillion worth of student loans. How do you just forgive $2 trillion worth of student loans? It's the same way. You have, it's kind of off topic, but it is really part of the topic, because this is what millennials are having to deal with. This is the whole thing that I wrote my book about.
Let me pause you right here, because I saw you holding back on what you were saying, and I'm sure you saw me smiling. If you want to go there, feel free. I actually want to, and I want to dive deeper with the pyramids. Say whatever you want, because this is fascinating, and I think it's what everyone's thinking. My show, mine is at least, if you want to say it, I'm giving you permission right now. Feel free. Okay. Whatever you're comfortable with. I was like, how do I ask? But we're already 80% of the way there. We might as well just. I want to know the pyramids. When you brought that up, I'm like, okay, this is fascinating, because from what I recall, just on that real quick, they were using slave labor, and they were building it up and doing one row at a time.
Never happened.
Okay, so what was it then? How did they?
Oh, but no one knows. They have some people think it was levitation. They were using levitation devices from an extraterrestrial. So there's all kind of theories out there.
And then same thing, like you were talking about the mathematics and all that stuff. When you said where did it all go, that's a fascinating question.
Where did it all go? Because you have all the hieroglyphics written in the pyramids, which are not giving an indication how they actually did it. Otherwise you would think that they would put all that into the pyramids, right? So you have all this religious stuff in the pyramids, but they don't really say how they actually put all this stuff together, who actually built this thing. And that's the evidence we have in the world. That's something. Then you go to the Mayans, right? Mayans are pyramid builders. They've got a timekeeping system, the Mayan clock, famous Mayan clock. We were all supposed to end in 2007 or something like that. But they have a clock that is kept by a calendar with rocks, right? They turn these rocks, and it's the most accurate timekeeping device known to man until the atomic clock was invented, like in 1953 or something like that. It was more accurate than anything other than an atomic clock. Now, where did they get that?
Which
I mean,
I
where
just
did they
have to
get
throw
that?
this out here. The whole
That-
daylight saving time concept. There was this stuff thousands of years ago,
Oh
and the
yeah,
best we can do is twice a year say, we can't get it accurate, so just change all the clocks back. That's like
right,
arbitrarily
right,
after this interview being like, I don't like what time it is, I'm going to change it.
right. So what you have is you have two different cultures separated by by great oceans or whatever. You know, the Mayan Indians in South America or Mexico, and you have the Egyptians in the pyramids in Egypt, and yet both of them, the people disappeared while the Egyptians didn't disappear. They remained. Their technology disappeared. However, they did it. Same thing with the Mayans. The Mayans just walked off in the woods. And so I say in my book is, you know, are we still going to remember what computers are by 2040? Will we even live in our cities anymore? Right? Because of what's coming, this change that's coming with AI and with oh my gosh, there's some very scary things coming and some very exciting things coming. With the studies that they're currently. Let me finish this other part because it all ties into this
Feel
part
free.
before we get to where it's going. And so, the reason why again the millennials are so different than the boomers, technology is the next area. When I was in my book, I was trying to remember what the first computer was that I had in my office back in the day, and it was an IBM something. I just remember it went on the desk and
Yes.
two floppy drives.
We
Those
probably
two
had the
floppy,
same one. I'm picturing it right now. Black on the front, the floppy goes
yeah,
here, had
yeah,
a giant knot button on it. There was no
yeah,
towers or
yeah.
anything. They were just
No, that floppy drive held both floppy drives held a whopping 136 kilobytes worth of
KB.
information, which is less than a two-page PDF today. That was the memory capacity of the computer. Well, so then we had to learn the computer, right? We had to learn in DOS. I remember my machine would crash. I'd just reload DOS and start over. We had WordPerfect was the word processing package where we didn't have a mouse. Didn't until Apple came out with a mouse. And so then we had to constantly be learning new programs and new systems. And then we had servers came in, and then group servers came in, and then Microsoft came out with their programs, and then they came out with Windows. Oh my gosh, Windows and Apple now competing. So then you had the internet came in the early 1990s, because I remember I had a business I was involved in. We had our first website in 1992, I think, or 93. So exciting. Slow over the telephone lines.
28.8. I remember that dial up.
Oh yeah, AOA. But anyway, we had to learn all that stuff. Okay, we stopped learning technology probably in about 2010. I'm just telling you, the flat out boomers, we just stopped learning it. We just got dog tired of it, and so we just stopped learning. So when the iPhone came out, 2007, we got the iPhone because it was kind of cool technology, but we didn't want to learn it. We just use it for the telephone, right, and anything else. But I mean, the millennials were raised on this. They get the iPhone and they figure out what everything does. So we have a generation in the workplace that's in charge of everything, that is tired of technology. They refuse to even acknowledge what technology does, and they have a workforce that's totally digitally native. And that's where this big disconnect's coming in, because boomers can't admit that they are unwilling to learn what they need to learn, unless they're forced to, technologically, to make their business advance. And at the same time, they're holding back their millennial talent who has all the wherewithal technologically to take their business to unbelievable places if they would just be given the opportunity. But the boomers are just kind of holding out till retirement. At 2025, probably about 95% of the boomers will be retired or hit age 65. The last of them hit age 65 in 2027. Right now, the 50% of the workforce is millennial. By 2025, globally, 75% of the workforce is going to be millennial. So they're going to do what they want to do. We're going to want to do because they're going to be in charge of it all. So we just have 5 short years left. But that technology was the second piece. And the third piece was the reason why they're different. And this whole idea of the industrialization of the connected age is education. How were millennials taught? Millennials were taught, I would say, 180 degrees differently than boomers were taught in the classroom. Boomers were taught rows and columns. You had a teacher at the front. You did your own work. You kept your eyes on your own paper. If you got caught cheating, you got a 0. No cooperation amongst the students unless you had teacher approval. For the millennials, it's totally the opposite. Teacher's a facilitator. The resources are on the internet. You share. Well, what about Bobby? He never does all his work. Well, if Bobby doesn't want to do any work and you have him on your team and you let him do that, well, that's your thing. But as far as the teacher's concerned, Bobby's just part of the team. So that they have to learn on the team who's going to work and who's not going to work. Believe me, millennials know when they get into your workforce who the workers are and who aren't the workers. And who they recognize a lot of the workers, who the workers are not, are the boomers. They're recognizing that pretty quick, that the boomers aren't really doing anything. They're kind of telling everybody else what to do, but they have no idea what they're doing.
Even though they're in the leadership and authority position.
Oh, yeah. And so
now I can see how that would be offensive if you're being insubordinate and just blatantly not listening. But it's an interesting dynamic with and I'm thinking of even when I was in groups and schools and stuff, and there's always the overachieve. I don't even like that word, overachiever. It's like, so if you do anything that's required, you're now an overachiever because everyone out, the bar is so low. Anyway, there's always the people who want to do more. There's the people who are kind of just there. And then you have people trying to do the least, but so they're just totally cool with it. Now, let me ask you this. Are they as cool in the workforce with it as they are in the classroom?
Oh, yeah. In fact, what a lot of times.
So it's the habit of the culture, not that there's more on the line for it.
Yeah, it's just how they were raised and educated. I mean, boomers always had the clown in the classroom. Everybody's got the clown in the classroom, right? The millennials have the clown in the classroom. A lot of times, the clown
I've heard
in the
of
classroom
that person.
Is actually the smartest person in the class, and they're just bored because they're going at such a slow pace. Because they learned this stuff 2 years ago and they're having to repeat it. And so they're bored and they're stuck in the classroom for 8 hours. And so they have to be there for 8 hours.
I'm glad this is getting recording.
When they get in a group environment and they're able to actually do what they know how to do. Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. So you'll find when you put a millennial team together. So how I present this so anyway, you have a philosophical age change, you get a business model age change. Those two combined together is what's I call it a millennium change cycle that's coming. And this is global. This has happened globally. It's going to change everything as soon as the millennials get in charge, and Gen Z behind them is the only thing that's going to keep the millennials in line. We can talk about that a little bit, but because the millennials have some pretty strict, they're some pretty crazy ideas, because and rightly so. So as they enter the workforce, what I'm trying to do is help employers and unleash their millennial talent. And I call it and save the world, because the reality is that they're going to be the ones who are going to make very difficult decisions in the next 5 years on what to do with technology, especially when AI comes into the workforce. So I tell my boomer friends, I say, okay, this is what you do. You find a problem that you're working on in your business. It doesn't have to be necessarily your top priority, but I would make it, if you could, your top priority problem that you just haven't been able to solve. Bring your top 3 millennials in your office and explain to them exactly what it is that you're trying to accomplish and how you envision accomplishing it. And then give them the task to come up with something. Give them 3 or 4 days to come up with something. And inevitably within a day and a half or 2 days, they will come back with a solution that you weren't expecting. And more often than not, they'll actually have an app on their phone so one of the persons in their group developed a dummy app, although they're trying to hook it up because it works so well, right? To show you what you can do. And the reality is the issues that boomers see today of whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish, whether it's in marketing or developing client relationships or mining a data mine full of material of data. How do we even approach this data? I got reams full of data. I don't even know how to approach it. They not only know how to approach it, they know the tools to use to approach it, and they know how to assimilate the tools that is being used with internet devices to put it on the internet through a mobile device.
Run it through some OCR so you can use it digitally instead of having to go through boxes.
Yeah. So what I tell the boomers is that this is the time to do your institutional knowledge transfer. You've got guys that are 58 to 65 years old walking around your office that have a wealth full of not just knowledge about your company, but how business is operated. Get them with your millennial talent and start them downloading what they know about your business and business in general in an organized fashion, and let the millennials start to run the company. And you'd be amazed at what will happen. And the boomers are typically, they're going to kick me out the door. I said, no, they're not going to kick you out the door unless you don't do anything. I mean, if you're dead weight, you should kick yourself out of the door. But the idea is that you have now provided them institutional knowledge that they're now going to innovate, and you get to be part of the sharing of the excitement of actually seeing something done with it. Because if you would have walked out the door without sharing that information, it would have been gone forever. No one would have
Yeah, it's
ever
just
done.
lost. And you're
It's
not
just
going to,
lost.
no matter what tech and what app, whatever, whatever, you're not going to get 20, 30 years of knowledge and
Right.
experience without 20, 30 years of knowledge and experience. And I think that's
Right.
what's lost. As much as I love the
Right.
tech, I would not trade it in a second for the relationships, the people, and all that. And I feel if you don't have that, which is the glue, I think it's
Yeah.
great. When I'm looking for talent and I hire people on my team, I'm like, do what you want. I go, here's the due date, and it might be 7 to
Yeah.
10 days from now. I don't care when you're working on it. If it's a Monday, Tuesday morning, noon, night, whenever, just
Yeah.
here's the due date, get it done. And I love giving that flexibility and that
Yeah.
freedom because I enjoy it myself. But at the same point, writing algorithms and scripts and all this while it's needed, you're still going to have the sales front, the interfacing, the relationships, whether it's on Zoom or in person. So I get what you're saying with the excitement, but it's also scary because you might just, if you have that mindset where you can take from anyone and there's no consequences, you're going to not even get through the door, let alone be in a lawsuit or self-implode the whole thing. However, if you know the constraints to work within and you truly believe it, I mean, you could tell anyone the framework or whatever, but if they just feel, well, I'm smarter than you and they have this arrogant air about them, you can still, you might get through for a few years, but you'll eventually collapse it 10 years down the line. You do need to know the new ways to do stuff, though. You can't. I mean, I had clients even 10 years ago, and I asked them. I go, how many basic marketing question when we're running a campaign? I go, how many clients do you have? How long have they been with you? Where are the results come? Just baseline the whole thing. He goes, and I'll never forget. He goes, I got 30 years of names, emails, phone. He had no email list. Basic 101.
Right. Yeah,
if you don't have an email list, you're toast. And this is 10 years ago. He goes, I got 30 years of all the data on all the customers. I go, can you send me a password to the database so we can look through it? And he's like, what database? I go, when he said I have all the emails, I'm thinking, well, in a system, because anything else is just absurd. And he goes, they're all in a box in the back. I go, okay, well, forget everything else for step we were going to discuss today. Here's our goal for this week, because I coach on a weekly step 1 week, move to the week 2 and everything. Don't overwhelm anyone. But I was like, Terry's going to hate me. You're going to love me in about 30 to 60 days from now. And I go, we need to get all that crap off paper and put it into where we can do stuff with it. And his assistant, Terry, and she's great. She literally had to go through and like 30 years of paperwork and then get all the emails from the paper, put them into the system. I go, we can't do anything if it's in a box at literally your office, but once it's online, the world's your new marketplace.
Oh yeah.
So if you don't know those soft skills, I think is what people call them, or even hard skills, whatever. If you don't have that competency, you're toast. However, if you're just going to act like, it's more dangerous to have the wrong mentality. I'll leave it with that. It's the best way you can surmise it.
The thing that was both in the literature and I've experienced personally with just telling people how to test this out. So my first question when we meet with a boomer client, we haven't met before, I said, when was the last time a new millennial employee walked into your office? And of course, they're a manager and an owner, typically business owners. I said, when was the last time a millennial, brand new on the job, walked into your office and asked you what you were doing? And they, almost to the person, they all start laughing and they'll say like, well, it just happened like last week, or what was that all about? They just start going all these stories of these people just walking in their office wondering who are they and what are they working on? And I said that and that comes from the idea of teamwork, and the millennials were not taught. They were taught to always go to the best source for information. So you don't waste your time with the teacher. You go out on the internet and find the expert. Well, you're the expert in the company, so they're coming right to you to find out from the expert himself what they're working on, which will give them an idea of do they want to work with this company or not, to be quite honest with you. And so I said that's what's happening. And the next question, once they find out what you're working on, they're going to ask you, why are you doing that? And I said, typically then they'll also ask that same question when you give them something to do. You say, here's a go fill out this permit application, or here's a marketing plan. I want you to go write something on this marketing plan. The first question they're going to ask is why. And you're like, well, because I said so. Well, no. Like, why are we doing it? Well, because the clients asked us to do it. We have the job and I'm telling you to do it. That's why. No. And so then they typically go back to their desk and they're really frustrated because you didn't listen to them, right? You didn't answer their question. Their question why has nothing to do with what we think why is. I'm saying from a boomer perspective and a lot of Xers as well. The why question has nothing to do with why that needs to be done. They know why it needs to be done. They know you have a job and this is what the job entails. They want to know what's the fundamental underlying reason for this being done at all, much less why you're doing it. They know why you're doing it, but why is this even a task at all? And then next question, once they get that answer, then they're going to say, well, how are you doing it? And then you're going to say, well, you go fill out the paperwork, you go on this program and here's the data that you enter. They say, no. How are you doing it? And so then again, the manager gets very frustrated with them. They're not asking how, they know how to do it. They've been taught how to do it. What they're asking is, how are you doing it? In other words, what is it? Here's the why, and how are you accomplishing the why? Because what they're looking for is the absolute fundamental reason for something to be done. I'll give you a permit application as an example, cut it short. Why do we have to do this water permit application? Well, they passed something called the Clean Water Act in 1972. And ever since then, we've had to fill out these permit applications. Well, why did they pass the Clean Water Act? Well, there was some pollution in some river bodies that were making people sick. And so they were afraid that industry was polluting and farm lands pollute and that kind of stuff. Oh, that's interesting. Why was that happening? Well, because we're fertilizing, industry's making stuff. It just keeps on, the why keeps on going until you finally get to the idea of protecting the environment and human health. They go, oh, that's why you're doing it. We're doing a water permit to protect human health and the environment from something that happened in 1972. Well, this is 2020, almost 2021. What has changed in the last 50 years? That this is why we're doing this. Do we still have to do this? In other words, I mean, have we not gotten better? Are we still doing this 50 years later from something in 1972? And then the how is we'd fill out all this paperwork. And so they want to figure out how can they meet the same reason why this law was passed in 1972, this underlying reason, not how it morphed over time the last 50 years. We're actually going to accomplish the why part, and the how we're going to do it. We're going to use technology that nobody touches anything. All this, it totally gets done from the laboratory. As soon as they send the test analysis into the lab, AI takes it over, takes the results, plugs it in wherever it's supposed to go, and either gives you a flag or a pass, and your permit's done. There is no more handing of paper, people looking at it or overviewing. It's all done by AI. That's what's happening.
Human interaction is completely removed from it, and it's
totally wait. It's because of what you're talking about. If I can do this in 15 minutes, as opposed to sitting at my desk working on this for 4 hours, just trying to come up in my brain of how to restate these words in my, following this format. Oh my gosh, what a bore! I can just write one program one time to write the report, and the AI will take care of the rest, write the report every time. Every time it gets this result, this is what it says, and boom, done.
See, and I see the efficiency as being a pro to that, but conversely, now you have the machines making the decisions over, maybe permits are a little bit more cut and dry. Are you following the rules or not? But I still think there's a fair degree. Maybe not, even with permits, most everything in life, there's always the context and, the two sides of the story where, you look at, I've went through this, you're looking at someone's resume, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to be the star all-class winner, and then you talk to them and you're like, really?
Oh, yeah.
So how do you think AI is going to combat that?
Well, that's the whole part of the whole issue. Is that you do have a human component. Who's going to control the AI and what the AI is doing? And the millennials are going to be the ones who are going to have to deal with this. And so what I try to tell the people I work with, that I say, well, as you get your millennials and they're involved in this in your organization, you got to on this what I call a next generation leader initiative, where you're training, you're doing this institutional knowledge transfer with your millennial talent. You take your top millennial talent and you put them on a team. I call it a millennial dream team. And they have really three tasks. First task is to review everything that you're doing in your organization and find out any inefficiencies based upon today's standards. Just as what you were talking about today. They have a box full of files that has value, that's in a box full of files that you need to get into electronic format, because anything not in electronic format in the next 5 years is going to be discarded. It's just because when millennials take over, if they don't know it's in the box, they never knew it was in the box, and they're just moving on.
Might not even realize stuff we used to be in a box. When you were talking about those diskettes, not even floppy diskettes. They held so little information, and then there was not floppy disk.
There was a diskette. It was a disk.
Yeah, the diskette, the thin one that was like more of a Frisbee. Then we got the hard disk. Yeah. And I remember those, and those were somewhere around 1.44 megs. If I were to look, I mean, we're pushing 15 to 20 megs a second. I know we're both using 4K cameras. I can't, you know how many discs it would take to even, it wouldn't even be possible. I've seen people share this before. It's like, who knows what this is? And it's a cassette tape. And I remember those. It's what I did my first recordings on, just commenting on TV shows. And, I saw this one where it's like, oh, my car came with an iPad holder. No, iPhone holder. And it was a cassette. They scratched up the screen because they thought it's where you put the phone just as a holder, and it was a cassette player. I mean, so to your point of if they don't realize stuff was in boxes, or you have archive files, or, when you say go to the file cabinet.
It's gone.
Well, what drive is it on? No, I mean the physical one that you spend hundreds and thousands of dollars for, and probably even have a room at the office where you just kept files. I mean, it's kind of weird even thinking about it, but I'm familiar with it.
So it's all changing. So then that's part of when they come to take over. When they get into a leadership position, if they don't know about it, they're not going to deal with it. So the information is just lost. So that's the first thing, is to have them go through the company and find out, talking to people, what's really important that you want to keep. And make sure that you put systems in place to archive that and put that digitally somehow into your system. The next thing they do is they look at what they're currently doing and how can they do what they're doing better with technology. How can technology make what you're currently doing? I'll use permitting as an example. How can we use technology to help us do our permitting better? And so they come back to the executive team and they say, this is where we can improve our technology. This is where our technology is old. We need to upgrade our technology. And this is the technology that's coming sooner on the horizon. We need to put some money in the bank because when this becomes available, we need to implement it. So that's the second thing they do. Those two things will take them probably 2 months for the first one, another 2 months for the second one. Then you start, because those are the two easy ones. And then you got to go with the hard one, which is to take this, now that they've proven themselves and proven to you that they know what they're doing and they know your company, right? They know your old data and what needs to be done with it. They know how you're currently doing what you're doing and what needs to be done with it. You give them the next task, which is take what we're doing, find out the fundamental why we're doing it, and invent the disruptor business that will put us out of business. How could we possibly do the same thing we're doing and meet the need, whatever the need is that we're trying to meet, in a different way that will put us out of business? And allow them to develop the disruptor, because the disruptor is coming, because the millennial talent is working on a disruptor, even though they're not necessarily working in your organization. Somebody's always trying to think of a better way to do something. And as soon as they find out that you're making money doing what you're doing and they come up with a better way to do it, they're not going to be, no hesitancy to start it and get some financial backing. And suddenly you find yourself up against a wall, not being able to compete. And so the idea of developing this disruptor is to recognize what's coming so you can build into your own organization a sustainability plan, a resiliency plan if this disruptor does in fact happen to manifest itself, and actually a transition plan if in fact they come up with a disruptor that actually works, right? And if this ever got out, we'd be out of business, is to go ahead and launch the disruptor while you're still in business, recognizing that over time. Yeah, because
then you have the corner on the market instead of the competition.
Yeah.
And what you're saying about getting the financial backing, I think it's easier now more than ever. There's so many angel investors in online this and people who have been doing it 20, 30 years with the advent, 40 now, with the advent of computers and just, Silicon Valley startups and all that, the culture of it. I mean, 50, 100 years, well, 50 isn't that far, but 75, 80 years ago, I mean, can you imagine in the, come on, math, 20, 60, 1930s, 1940s. Well, the Depression was going on, so there was
Yeah.
definitely no one just handing out money, but you know what I mean? The culture,
Oh yeah.
even in
Yeah.
that generation, shifted from, where would you even get a loan short of being Ford or Rockefeller or, having millions in personal income to begin with,
Yeah.
that they know you were good for it. So I think it's
It's
kind of
a,
exciting how people can take over. And like you're saying, the millennials, there's all these opportunities, but I think it's so important that, the core values, whether it's an advanced society or not, it's all going to come back down to those leadership principles. If you
yeah.
don't have
Yeah.
good core values, it's not going to
And
work.
and that's what in this next generation leader initiative, the idea being what part of what you want to teach is the core values of the organization. So you take your top millennial talent, including a lot of you want to do this with all your millennial talent, and in fact, your entire talent base, because we're all postmodern in some way, no matter your age. It's not your vision statement, it's not your mission statement. Those things are because most people aren't living up to their mission or their vision because they were developed 40 years ago or 30 years ago or 20 years ago, and the millennials might have read them, but they say they're not doing it, and so it doesn't bode well for you. But everybody's got core values that were also developed during this time when mission and vision was coming out. This idea of values, is I tell them that they would have their executive team actually define what each of those core values are: excellence, integrity, people. We value our people. What does that mean by definition, and what does it look like by example? That the executive team has to come up with this. And then to start teaching your talent, this is what we mean by excellence. This is what we mean by valuing our people. And if you don't see this demonstrated within our company, excellence and valuing our people and whatever else the core values are, then we want to know about it. So it lets the talent know that there is an expectation for meeting a standard, and that standard is the core value, versus saying, lying, cheating, stealing, whatever. Then you could have that as part of your core values. We value, not stealing from the company, maybe honesty or integrity. That allows them to start communicating internally using core values. So everything that they would discuss, core values have to fit into this somewhere. Well, here's a proposal. This is going out to a client. Well, does the proposal meet our excellence standards? Yes, it does, and this is why. They give you, is the core value fair to everyone that we're dealing with? Is it fair with our clients and fair with us? And they're, again, being whatever is fair. How do you define fair? And again, that's just this idea of trying to reestablish truth and justice, the ideas of truth and justice in the millennials. And this is why I say that I'm not sure if the next 15 or 20 years are going to be good or bad, but I do know that they're going to be the ones who are making the decisions. And if they don't have a good idea of what is truth and a good idea of what is justice, then sometimes the decisions may not necessarily be good for everyone. It would be good for them who are making the decisions because they're getting what they want. But the rest who are affected by their decisions, it could be really bad.
Yeah, it's always good when you get the end result, but if you have to burn through 99 other people in the process, it's...
Well, that's the communist playbook, which is the ends justify the means. So if you got to kill 60 million people to get everybody to get in line, as Mao did, you just kill 60 million people. And nobody's going to complain, because anybody who complains, they just joined the 60 million people. So people we can do some pretty bad things, and the technologies that is coming out can allow that to happen very rapidly. And the technologies that are coming out also are not, because it's technology. It's not, it's just technology. I was in my book. Had a whole section on this of the not necessarily the dark side of what could happen, but I did have some dark side stories of what could happen. And I was talking about military application of AI. And I just gave 2 or 3 examples in the book, and my editor that was reading my book called me up and said, "Philip, you have to take these sections out." And I said, "Why?"
Yeah, why?
I said, "They're not graphic or anything." She said, "They scared me to death." She said, "I literally had to stop reading the book." And she said, I couldn't even do whatever I was doing the rest of the night, just thinking about what I said. I didn't write about the bad stuff. I mean, just go to YouTube. This stuff's available on YouTube. It's all over the place. And she said, I don't want to even think about that. She said, "You're going to scare your readers to death." I said, and so I took it out because I don't want to scare my readers to death.
Well, now
But
I'm curious what it is, and it's like it's a fine line. I mean, even what you say in an interview or something, I was thinking about this more now than ever. It's like, what would you really rather have? Be completely, the whole ignorance is bliss and, everything's great because, I never saw it coming, or at least go,
Right.
here's the reality now. If we don't do something 10 or 20 years from now, it
Well,
would be exponentially worse.
yeah,
I mean, it's that whole boil a frog thing.
yeah.
Just slowly
I
turn
just
it up and, when did this happen?
now
Well,
we know our president has a way with words and he's boastful at times. But when he says our military has things that are unbelievable, believe me, we have things that the Chinese and the Russians are dying for to get because it's unbelievable. Just go on the internet to look up AI, military application of AI, and you'll get a lot of results of what's actually available. But that's just one area. The whole idea of what is the mind and what is the brain, and part of what the millennials are after. Because remember, part of this discussion is what is the why and what is the how. Millennials are going to be the first generation to unlock the Pandora's box, which has been kept by the academic elite in our colleges and universities.
and you're not talking about the podcasting station Pandora or the music station either.
No. This is the academic elite in the universities globally and the scientific community have been withholding the discoveries over the last 100 years in science and mathematics and applied physics. Now they've been using them, but they've been withholding them from the public of what the implications of what they have discovered are. And they've continued to teach students an outdated 1880s or 1790s to 1890s, that 100-year worldview or perspective of the discoveries in science from that 1890 perspective, as opposed to a 2020 perspective. And millennials are going to be the first generation because this whole idea of truth and justice is they don't believe anything, is that they're going to encounter this description of what they're seeing in science and the description given about why it is this way, and they're going to laugh, and they are already laughing. They're just cracking up saying, "This, are you kidding me? The genetic code, which is, the odds of the genetic code coming into existence by random mutation is impossible. In fact, the scientists have already said it's impossible. I've had several said that. That's where the founder of DNA said it was an alien transplant. They call it panspermia. Richard Dawkins also said panspermia was how we got genetic material on the earth. It never evolved here, but it evolved somewhere else. But you never hear that in the mainstream. You're always taught, Darwinian evolution, all this kind of stuff. They're going to be the ones to open these doors to these and unlock these secrets. This whole idea of 0-point energy. This is something that I'm, and most recently, been investigating. Absolutely fascinating. That the energy that's available just around us. We talk about gravity. What is energy? No one knows what energy is. We know what energy does, and we can describe it, but no one knows really what it is. No one knows what gravity is. We can describe its function. What we have mathematical principles associated with gravity. It. But we don't know. We don't really know what it is and how it works. But the forces. But they do know that there's this at the most subatomic physics level. There is this thing that they're discovering that these entities, charges, come into existence and go out of existence. It's like, well, where did they go when they disappear? Right? Because they were right here, and now they're not there. And then they're back here again, and then they're not here. That's what they call this area of 0-point energy, where this energy is going in and out. This flux of energy is coming in and out of existence. And if you can figure out a way to harness that energy, that's the energy that's running the entire universe. And they are coming up with ways to harness this. And so that's the stuff that millennials are going to get hold of. And they're going to investigate it. They're going to say, why are we going to keep this secret? We can solve the energy crisis, right? Same thing with global debt. I mean, I like to tell my millennial kids and their friends that I'm part of the boomer generation that just lied to you about everything, right? We lied to you that you can have it all. We lied to you that evolution was real. We didn't know any different. That's what we were taught. So we just continued to lie. We lied to you that we live in a closed system universe where these things can't happen because it violates one of the laws of entropy or whatever, that, the energy is neither created nor destroyed unless you have an open system where the energy is coming from somewhere else. It's not being created or destroyed. It's still there. Anyway, they're going to throw all those things off and start to really discover some pretty amazing things. And that's what I'm saying. We're not going to.
So I'm hearing a lot of the next 15, 20 years is going to be very exciting and fun.
Oh,
because,
gosh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's you've mentioned some things that I've even thought about, whether it was in school or after or whatever. And, the pyramids, like I said, when you mentioned it, were just, what was the deal with those? And I've heard probably 3 to 5 different stories on it. And it would be cool to have a definitive, all right, here's, the whole thing with Pluto. I grew up, Pluto was a planet.
Yeah.
Now it's not. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Same thing with like the park near my house, that it was one name for like 100 years and then they changed it to something else, and none of us acknowledge it. But it's like on a deeper level, there's just some person creating the names and the stories that everyone else just believes in the narrative. But at the end of the day, it's still just a person doing it. What's the main cause of it? Because it might be science fact or it might be science fiction. It's, why is Einsteinium called Einsteinium? Well, because of Einstein.
Right. It's we were talking about we were talking about finances earlier, and that this is another biggie. It's just the boomers and millennials want the same thing. We absolutely want the exact same thing. They're just going to do it, right? The boomers we haven't been able to do it because we don't have the authority, or we haven't given ourselves the authority. I give this example on global finances. I think I heard that Ireland has the highest debt ratio of any country in the world. That's what the last I heard. I think their debt to GDP was something like 10,000, something ridiculous, like 10,000. So it would take them 10,000 years of just whatever they made. They're going to pay their debt with whatever they made for the next 10,000 years. And that doesn't include the interest on the debt. That's just to pay off the debt. They're never going to catch up. That's the whole idea. So you have these countries in the world, there's many more of them. They're never going to catch up on their debt. Portugal is another one. They're always going into default. How come we haven't heard about them going into default lately? Well, because the World Bank's working with them and all this kind of stuff, holding up their debt.
Yeah, when you mentioned the Bitcoin and they're just going to reset everything, it's like,
they're just going to reset everything. They're going to go to the World Bank and they're going to get over with all the big banks in the world. Say, we're going to have a reset party. Everybody goes back to zero and it all goes to Bitcoin.
But the interesting thing with that is, just like with the bailouts and all of that stuff going on, if you don't have the right mindset and culture, the people who got in those positions in the first place, I'm pretty confident, like with 99.9999999% certainty, they're just going to go back into it. It's like the whole thing with winning the lottery. If you have someone not trained on money and you give them $10 million, probably going to have a real nice car with
totally agree, except Bitcoin can be traced. Electronic currency can be traced. So there's not going to be any graft. There's not going to be any payola under the table. They can't take
it's arguably a better system, because you can't steal from it or you can't cheat with it. And, I'd like to think over the last 150 plus years, no one's ever done anything illegal or immoral with money, but well, that's a lie.
It's all traceable. So they say, okay, if you have a lot of debt, but you have no assets, well, we're going to give you a little bit of assets to start off with, because everybody's starting back at zero. So we're going to give you a little bit to survive, but not a whole lot. If you have a whole lot of assets, you're going to get a whole lot of, it's not going to be Bitcoin. It'll be whatever China or the United States or the global system comes up with. So if you have a lot of assets, they'll give you a lot of the Bitcoin or whatever the currency is.
Yeah.
And then you just everybody starts this, and you make it level, so that everybody's kind of back where you were before, when you had this idea of debt and currency and all this kind of stuff, but the debt's gone. So everybody nobody owes anybody anything. And then they just start over, and that's all one currency. It just totally makes sense. I mean, Just totally makes sense. So the millennials are going to go with what makes sense. They're not going to be, they're not thinking about, well, this is the way we haven't done it for the last 300 years. That's industrial age thinking. That's the way we've done it for the last 300 years. Connected age thinking is how can we creatively innovate this so we never have to do what we've done for the last 300 years?
How can you do it
Because that
better,
was just
faster, more
stupid.
efficient?
Yeah, that was just stupid. We let the whole globe get into debt. How stupid is that? We're not paying for it. You think the millennials are going to say, okay, we're going to voluntarily jack up our own tax base to 60% to pay for all this debt that the government has accumulated over the last 30 years of wasteful spending? They're not going to do that. They're just going to say, well, the economists said we need to have hyperinflation to get rid of it. No, we don't. We just go to a global currency and, well, they'll take care of it right there. What would you rather, hyperinflation or global currency? Well, I think we'll go with the global currency. That's just their mindset. Again, they're not thinking the way that most people would be thinking. So,
wow. Well, I'm glad that you're addressing the issue because there definitely is one. I have one more question for you before we thank our sponsor, and it is, I feel like we already went here, and I went to pull this up about 25 minutes ago because we already covered 6 or 7 typical wheel of whatever things.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'm not going to ask about the pyramids or any of that. We definitely touched on it. I'm still interested. We could go 3 hours on that alone. But with all the talk of millennials in your book and what you're doing, I want to ask you right now, if you had to choose someone right now as a leader, who would you pick for the millennial leader right now? Someone, I don't even know the cutoff, someone under 30, someone between 20 and 30? Or 18 and 30, let's go with adults.
As far as age group for millennials, 39 to 22, 39 is probably where they fall in there.
All right. So who would be the best millennial leader you think right now?
As a person or just as an example?
Let's go with like CEO or, I mean, if you want to say prime minister, go for it. But like a CEO or someone to run a governor, state, business, who really impresses you as a millennial leader right now?
I tell you, the Klacek, who's running for Congress in Baltimore, and
how old is he?
Who came up with it's a woman.
How old is she?
She's African American. She's the one that put out the pretty crazy commercial to run for Congress. So she's probably, I would say, between 29 and 32. That'd be my guess.
Okay.
She has, and the reason why I say that she would be one of those examples because she has totally put herself out there, in a politically,
you have to be bold,
in a non-politically correct position, and she's stating the truth. She's stating the facts and putting it all out there and letting the chips fall wherever they lie. And that's really what you want to find in your millennial leaders is someone who will be truthful and honest with what they're seeing, not what you're expecting them to see or what you're hoping that they see, but they really communicate back to you what they really are seeing and why this is unacceptable. We're not going to accept this anymore within your own organization. That's the hardest, and that's why they have to be. It's difficult, because you don't want to give up control of your organization. The reality is you're losing control of your organization, even if you still own it in as little as 5 years when the millennials take over, and either they're going to quit and go somewhere else or they're going to take over your company, is to allow them to take over your company. So find that person within your organization that tells it straight and has a good head on the shoulders and seems to be a responsible individual, and then approach them with the very simple question, which is, what do they want to do with their career path? Where is their career path? They see their career path taking them. And then make
sure they got that ambition to be around another 5 or 10 years.
Yeah. If we gave you the opportunity to accomplish that in our organization, what would that look like for you? What position would you see? Because they're not really position oriented more than anything. Those titles, while they like titles, but they're really not into titles. But you can use a title of what position you would really like to see yourself in our organization. Where would the top position be? And allow them to say where they think that their top position would be. And if you see them actually at a higher level, you've got to always be careful of Peter principle, which is, you're always promoting somebody higher than they're really capable of achieving at that current time. Try to avoid that, but also encourage them that if there's something that you think they can actually reach higher, is to let them know that they could reach higher.
Don't hold them back.
Yeah, don't hold them back. And I'm going to help you get there. Right there. Right, I'm going to help you get there. We're starting today. And they will take others with them. So you elevate one, and then they'll take others with them, and your whole company will change for the better, for the future. The last part of that, I'll just share a quick story with you. Meeting with one of my boomer friends who gave me an awesome opportunity with his organization, and he didn't really want to do what I was doing, what I was offering. But we were friends, and so we had good conversations. He called me back a year and a half later and said, "Okay, we got to go do this today." I said, "Well, why is it so necessary?" He said, "You got to do it today." And so we started that day, and we built up something pretty phenomenally with the organization. This is the story behind it. He said, "I went to a sales meeting," and he's early 60s, and said, "I sat with the oldest person in the room, for the client was 35 years old, and he had 4 direct reports sitting with him in the room, and the oldest one of those was probably 29. And he said, these are the people who are giving us this work." And he said, while I could talk to them, he said, I couldn't relate to them, and they couldn't relate to me. And he said he came to realize that if he doesn't get somebody 35 years old in front of that client, within the next 6 months, they're going to lose that client. Because the millennials are going to give work to people that they know and trust, and the people that they know and trust are typically their age, and they have a wariness about boomers. They like boomers, were their parents, but are we good for them in business? They're not necessarily so sure. It's just as we're not necessarily so sure about them, right? That it runs both ways.
I think everyone has something of value, and like I said, there's a lot of wisdom. You can't get 20. I remember one of my first clients, the one that I've had over 10 years now. I remember I go, "When did you start your company?" And this was just at the table. We were talking in person, and it was really to just close on a deal and help them. And I'll never forget, he started his company the year I was born.
Yeah.
And I was in my young 20s at the time, and I said, "Well, I've been doing business more than half my life," which is true. I think I would have been like 24 at the time, in like some 6 months, 24 and some change. I started my first company when I was 12, and so it was fun to say I've been doing business more than half my life. And he's like, "Half of what?" And there was that dichotomy. It was fun to joke around about it, but the reality is I have the utmost respect for people that, you've had a business longer than I've been alive. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't I want to learn from someone like that? Not just be like, "Oh, you're old and outdated." I think that's whatever.
Well, there is the idea of value and respect. But if you think about it, when did you start your company? 12 years old. I started my first company when I was 28, multimillionaire at age 32. If you look at anybody who's done anything of significance in the world, they're typically between the ages of 18 and 32. Look at all the artists, all the music that you listen to today. I mean, every once in a while you'll listen to an oldie but goodie. They're still around. The Spinners are still around. They're 70 years old. But when they first came out with their music, they were in their teens and early 20s. Same thing. You have these early 20s to early 30s in talent in your company that they are in their highest level of engagement, productivity, and loyalty.
Yeah, the ambition and the creativity is through the roof.
My gosh, unbelievable. It's just to let them go. Let them do what they know how to do before they go out and start their own company and compete with you.
Yeah, that's exactly
because that's what I did. I went out, I started my own company and competed with the people that I worked for.
Like you were saying earlier, it's like whoever's the boredest in the classroom, it's like let them run wild. Yeah. But I'll say that with a caveat of you need to understand, respect, and I'd say love people. Otherwise, it's like we could go off on that. But we're going to thank the sponsor and come back for the imperfect action round.
Perfect. Thank you.
Every business needs a book, including yours. Visit freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com today to learn the 7 steps to publish and promote your nonfiction lead and profit-generating business book in 8 weeks. Once again, that's freebusinessbookpublishingcourse.com. And we are back with the imperfect action round. Philip, are you ready to take imperfect action?
I am.
All right, so these are 60-second answers, rapid fire, real quick. First
I'm
one,
ready.
what is the fastest path to the profits?
Fastest path to the profits is truly unleashing your millennial talent and allowing them to creatively innovate what it is that you're trying to do.
Excellent. Number 2, what is the biggest problem you see your prospects making and the fastest way for them to fix it?
Biggest problem that they have is their lack of development, alignment, development, and advancement of their millennial talent. Easiest way to fix it is either do internal coaching or external coaching to align your talent with their career path, provide them development, and encourage their development and advance them quickly.
Number 3, what is the best way to maximize customer lifetime value?
Best way to maximize customer lifetime value is relationships. As we were discussing, especially as you've been mentioning earlier, this whole idea of relationships, and nothing beats that. Nothing beats the handshake, although with COVID, no more handshakes, but nothing beats the personal touch. And you can't do it over Zoom or video conferencing. You have to get there. You have to meet them in person. People give work to the people they know and trust comes through a relationship.
Excellent. Well, I have a couple more questions, but what are some books you'd recommend to Expert Authority World that have made an impact on your life?
The Bible. That's the number one for myself personally.
Nothing's going to top that. I mean,
the really from my perspective, I read a lot of business books and I read a lot of scriptural books or faith-based books. Understanding the Times. I'll give you that's the best. So it's like a textbook. But if you want to find out about worldview and what's happening in our world today, Understanding the Times by Summit Ministries. It's a very dry read, but oh my gosh, it'll open your eyes.
Well, I appreciate those. I have not heard of the second one, but I also believe in the Bible and Scripture, and it's my number one mention as well. Where would you like people to learn more about you?
UnleashTheMillennials.com. UnleashTheMillennials.com is my book website. Books available on Amazon as a paperback and Kindle ebook. And then I have a coaching business, engineering leadership design company. And so that's engineeringleadershipdesign.com. Either
Excellent.
one of those gets me.
Excellent. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been very intriguing, interesting, and I love that we could just go deep with some of the questions because I know sometimes you want to hold back and be PC and all that, but I'm glad you opened up on some of this stuff. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And anytime you want to get together with talk about the pyramids or something like that in more detail, it's quite an interesting adventure.
Excellent. Well, Expert Authority World, we have another great episode here today. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day, and God bless.